You were created to stand out, to be exceptional, to be unique by design. So welcome to Exceptional Living. Well, hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Exceptional Living. I'm your host, April Ripley, and I'm so excited that you've joined me here today. I first want to thank all of our subscribers, those who have not only subscribed to our channel, but who have liked and shared it. And I want to encourage you, if you're watching now and have not, be sure to click that like button in the bottom left and share and subscribe. As you know, our purpose is always to inform, to inspire, and to ignite the greatness that lives on the inside of you. And we do this by hearing from global thought leaders, innovators, creatives, experts, even grassroots organizers to share life-changing tactics, insights, proven tools from, again, a myriad of persons and experts in their fields. Why? To help enlarge your capacity. Your learning expands great souls. There's a great African proverb that says that. And so that's the purpose of this show. And we want to make sure that you're equipped, empowered with the tools and the knowledge that are necessary for influence, for impact, and certainly to see you thrive and flourish. So in a world where one is conditioned to fit in, know that you, yes, you were created to stand out, to be exceptional, unique by design. And our very special guest today is of no exception. Nigel Chinakara is from the wonderful nation of Zimbabwe. Nigel's career as a professional economist and businessman has spanned over 2 decades. He commenced his service at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe as an assistant economist, then as an investment analyst and fund manager at Bar Discount House Limited, where he was appointed a director at the young age of 24. His areas of expertise include banking and economics, investment analyst, businessman, and leadership pundit. Nigel is affiliated with numerous institutions, such as the Young Global Leaders of the World Economic Forum, for which he is also an alumni. He is also the founding curator and active member of all Global Shapers Hubs of WEF in Zimbabwe since 2012. Notably, Nigel is former president of the Zimbabwe Economic Society, where he served as the organization with distinction. So, Exceptional Living family, please welcome our very special guest, Mr. Nigel Chinakara. Hello, Nigel. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. April Ripley. What a pleasure for me to be invited to this special program.
Thank you, Nigel. We are so honored to have you, and we know that your schedule is in quite demand, and so we are honored to have you here, sir. Wow, so much. You certainly have been a trailblazer and a prodigy. I would say a prodigy, just going through your credentials, and at a young age, you were in high levels of leadership and responsibility. So Nigel, share with us that journey into banking and where you ended up at the age of 24.
Well, April, I think I can testify that I've had a blessed life. Being an economics graduate from the University of Zimbabwe, I graduated in the top 6 of my class, and that then meant that I had quite a number of options at the time in terms of employment. And I opted to settle at the central bank so that I could understand the banking system and the way banks operated in Zim. I had a secret dream and passion, which was to start my own bank from scratch. And so I found out that there was no better place to be than to be at the central bank as a junior economist. My own passion was to trade financial securities. And so I ended up in the public finance department where we were trading government bonds there and treasury bills. And that really created a solid base for me. I then interacted with the market and was able to identify the top trading institutions within Zimbabwe at the time. And that accorded me a job at Bard Discount House. There must have been about 400 applicants for that job, investment analyst. And by God's grace, after some tough interviews, I managed to secure that job. It was a job I loved. It allowed me to analyze financial markets for about 2 years before I was catapulted into the role of a director and a fund manager. And so that career in 5 years within an Anglo-American discount house, which is essentially a securities trading business on the fixed income side, enabled me to then begin to plot setting up my own institution. And yeah, that was the journey. I went to an entrepreneurial development school called Empritech, and that gave me the 10 attributes for a successful entrepreneur. I excelled in terms of those matrix, the 10 matrix that they had. And then I was ready, to launch my own small securities trading institution. And that was the genesis of my own business journey.
Nigel, listening to you share your journey, certainly it was with intention, right? You saw where you wanted to get to, owning your own bank, and you took the necessary steps with diligence and with focus in your studies, but also to be the one applicant that secured the job. It had to be certainly God's grace.
Absolutely.
Absolutely God's grace out of 400 applicants, and still very young. Nigel, what are some things that you believe that as you let's take us back to that interview for this job. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you think, because often, young people talk about, I have my resume, and they think that the resume is what's going to land them the job because it all looks good on paper. Mm-hmm. But your experience says that they were looking for something beyond the resume. Mm-hmm. Would you share with us what you felt they were looking for in the interview and what allowed you the grace to secure the position?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because I personally was under a bit of pressure. We had just gotten pregnant. My wife was expecting our first baby, so I married young. And I felt very strongly that this was a make or break job. And so there was a lot of prayer behind, securing this job. I knew the institution. I had interviewed the CEO on a number of occasions on behalf of the central bank. So I had that unfair advantage in that he knew me as an inquisitive economist because I sought to understand the financial markets. But then, because I knew that this job would be paying me more than I was earning at the central bank, I said to my wife, this is a gateway for us, for greater things. And sure enough, it was a tough interview. They had the 400 applicants. They narrowed them down to 10. And then there was a panel of interviewers who did what they call the second round, and they interrogated the 10 so that we would get to 3, and then the CEO would interview the 3 of us. And at that point in time, I felt I had the credentials. I was doing my master's. I was also prepared to do a diploma in banking. And I felt, because of my knowledge of the industry, that I had what I would call the unfair advantage. So I walked in very confidently into the interview. And then lo and behold, April, they began to ask, very basic and puzzling questions at that. So I had to be on my toes. So, for example, they said, think about it. If we had 10 marbles, same size, but one had a different weight, and you had a scale to, actually measure up and identify the one that was heavier than the others, how would you go about it? Now, ordinarily, that question, maybe you can have a go at it, April. How would you answer that?
Okay, Nigel, the questions are going the other way because I'm thinking to myself, wow, wow. Like, how would you answer that? Because you've shared,
So I
yeah.
I was
Tell us how
on my
you answered, Nigel. Let's get there. Let's
yeah.
get the right answer.
So I said, look, I mean, if they were 10 balls, I would put 5 on the scale on
Mhm.
each side. And then if the scale tilted on the one hand, on the other side, then I knew that that was the side where the heavier marble was. And then at the second attempt, obviously 2 each. And if it tilted the other way, then, I would have a third crack because I was only allowed 3 attempts. And that was it.
Oh,
I solved it.
yeah.
And the initial instinct, of course, in an interview setup where you're expecting to be asked, the economic questions, the financial market questions, this is the final interview, and they flip it and
Mm,
ask that very basic little puzzle. And I got it. And obviously, that just, and they clapped their hands, this last panel with the
yes.
CEO. Yes. And from then on, my confidence was soaring. And whatever else they asked me, I just, chopped up those questions, with a ready smile in a friendly atmosphere. They liked my demeanor, the way I conducted myself. And that was it. And I got the job.
Wow. So, there's something to what you said. They really asked you, Nigel, back to what we're just sharing. It wasn't just what was on paper, right? Because you
Mhm,
were obviously on the track, your credentials, banking in the top percent of your class. But something you mentioned this word inquisitive, that you were an inquisitive economist. And so, that I think speaks to how people begin to position themselves not just at a job but also in their life work, right? To be inquisitive, um,
mhm,
to be a critical thinker, which is what that question really was about. It wasn't just about, okay, here's a spreadsheet, here's some reporting, analyze it, which probably any of the applicants to do, but it was more of how does this person think, what the method. I know there's a scientific method to thinking, but critical thinking. And
mhm,
uh, Nigel, I know that you're also involved with leadership training, and
mhm,
you work there in Zim, but really globally, your reach is global. As we met in the United States, actually for the very first time at a conference, and this conference was about leadership and economic development, but going back to the mindset, critical thinking and problem solving, which really is what that question was about.
mhm.
So, Nigel, share with us a bit of your journey since the bank. But you also mentioned that you went to an entrepreneurial school.
Mm-hmm.
uh, for what you believed your life's work was, and your impact in the financial industry. How does all of this tie in, or is there some type of correlation to the business, to the critical thinking, to the leadership? Share with us about that.
Well, I initially, because of those academic credentials, I was offered a lectureship position within the university that I attended to do a postgrad. So at the end of it all, the scholarship that I was offered enabled me to focus on a decision that I had to make. Was I going to be an academic, or was I going to be something else? And what I yearned for was to be what I now call a pracademic. I didn't want just to understand the theory of things, but I wanted to be a doer, and a doer of, with impact, to change my country, to change my person and my family circumstances. And so, from that perspective, studying economics and banking gave me an understanding of how developing economies work and how developed economies work. And then being able to compare and contrast, and then to see how the financial markets could be used to leverage the development agenda for, our country. And in that journey, I started and embarked on joining the Economic Society, getting to understand how things actually worked in the marketplace. Being in the central bank gave me a vantage point, of course, and then being an active participant in the financial markets enabled me to see how those tie up together. That then took me, of course, to Bard Discount House, where I served for 5 years and did a lot of work on the bonds trading as well as the fund management side of things. And that gave me the ideas of propelling myself to acquiring capital and being able to, have a stake in a banking institution that I founded with partners, and then being able to utilize our dividends, our corporate social responsibility programs, to develop other entrepreneurs, to be able to lend money to small, medium enterprises for them to start businesses. With us, of course, having modeled it, because we ourselves were young bankers. And that gave a momentum to people that if the young guys could create a new banking institution, which became quite a behemoth, because our market share in the 7 years that I was at the realm came in at just under 9% in the space of 5 years. And so if you looked at that growth, I became a wonder kid, so to speak. And in so doing, I became a mentor, a guide to others, an encourager, a motivator to other entrepreneurs, and then began to link that with the development agenda within our country. So things like financial literacy are things that I became acquainted with. I ran a television program called Making Money Make Sense, which introduced the Black folks to the financial markets in Zimbabwe. And then, of course, teaching people how to invest on the stock market, unit trusts or mutual funds, as you call them. And all that led to development capital being availed and to the growth of our economy. And so I tied up my economics, as you can see, with my banking experience. And then, of course, in the process, then discovered that there was a dearth in leadership. And so it became a passion to study leadership for myself so that I could learn how to lead myself first before I could lead others within my group. And by the 7th year, We had about 30 branches, 1,800 people. We were a top company on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, and we won that award, a couple of times. I became director of the year, of all the listed companies, etc., etc. And that within itself meant throughout that process, I had to be learning more and more about leadership and its complexities as I rose up the ranks within the marketplace and as my own institution got bigger and bigger. I obviously encountered a lot of challenges throughout that journey, part of which actually led me to lose my job. I then got promoted to be deputy chairman, which was a non executive position. And that led me to relocate to Cape Town. And I was arrested on two occasions for my big mouth, April. So I was detained just briefly. But that led me to also understand that, the higher you go up in life, the higher quality of enemy you begin to encounter, and the bigger the challenges they are as you rise up in leadership. And
Mm.
obviously, I hadn't handled certain things as well as I could have, as I learned later on
Mhm.
with 2020 hindsight. And so I honed in on my leadership skills. I benefited a lot from the World Economic Forum. They sent me, Professor Schwab sent me to Harvard, where I went to the Kennedy Government School of Governance,
Mhm.
and that exposure was priceless. I met great mentors, great lecturers at Harvard, and they then taught me, to deal with challenges in a more effective way. And thanks be to God, I've become now a leadership development coach. I set up my own institute, Success Motivation Institute Africa. And within it, I mentor now, from kids from a young age, junior managers, and corporate leaders, and leaders, within organizations, because it became an area of passion for me. And that's how I now contribute to the development of our country and Southern Africa.
Wow. Wow, Nigel, what a journey. But so many salient things that you brought out, and I'm taking notes. Everyone knows that when we have these programs that I'm taking notes because I'm learning. And as I shared earlier, the African proverb that says that learning expands great souls. And so even in your journey, you're always open to learning. And I think that's important. That's one of the there are a lot of things that for leaders, right? The credibility that you bring as a person, your character, who you are, certainly your competencies, what you're able to do, but also your capacity. Um, but one of those is certainly within the competency and within the capacity building is your desire to learn, but also your willingness, right? That you submit to the learning. And you talked about this practidemic. I love that, right? Practidemic, that you didn't just want to know the theory, read the books. You wanted to be able to apply what you learn. And scripture talks about that, right? That wisdom is you get knowledge, get understanding, but it's applying that wisely is how you bring about success in your life. And that you were very ardent and I would say earnest in your knowledge, Nigel, and certainly intentional. You knew exactly where you wanted to focus. You studied other countries that were developed to see models and cases of how they did things compared to developing countries and what could be done, some things that fit, because not all models fit everywhere, right? So it's adjusting that model and looking at stakeholders, looking at the inputs that are necessary, looking at the organizational structure and all these things. Certainly as a fellow Harvard Kennedy policy school, Kennedy School of Government, all the things that you learn that help you really go back to look at what seems to be a problem but the perspective, you see it as an opportunity to learn, but also to engage and create, as you said, these programs of financial literacy in your own Success Motivation Institute Africa, and to see where you saw where the need is. And I think that's something too, as leaders, is to step back and for a moment and to assess, right? That's part of your analysis training, assess where the problem is. And I remember something that Bishop Desmond Tutu was pretty famous for saying it, social viral. And he said, okay, you can rescue a man out of the water, but go to the top and find out why he's falling in. And so many times we like to put bandages on what we see. The results are, we can just patch it like a tire, right? It has a leak and we keep patching it, but eventually you're going to have to replace that tire with a new tire, right? You can only ride and patch and smooth over. And so I think, again, it goes back really to the question that you had in your interview, is how to think critically through a problem. And you've done that in your journey, and you're continuing to do that. And now you have developed a social capital mechanism that allows persons to come in and to teach them not just the things you learned by theory, but also through application, and that they can too go out into the world in their varied fields as leaders, as influencers, to bring impact positively. So much, Nigel, so much. But I love your journey, and as you said, you experienced a setback, and you talk, and you just shared with us openly. So what are some things in that moment? I think you said you knew to, or you learned afterwards, right, with hindsight, maybe you shouldn't have said it that way or done it that particular way. For people who are watching, who are also maybe, at a point in their life where they feel that there's a wall, or maybe they're still, dealing with a disappointment that they had, how would you encourage them to live through, to learn through, to bounce back during those times?
So I like your reflections, April. I think you've really, listening to you was really quite stimulating. And I think challenges are there. The Bible says trouble is sure to come. And if you look at life from that perspective, that you may be on a high, but you must know that you will hit some bumps along the way, and maybe even career off course, if not downhill. And your capacity, therefore, to have the spiritual, mental, and emotional fortitude to believe in yourself and believe in your God, that you're capable of bouncing back, is a key attribute, I think, for any leader. If you embark on a journey, there are going to be risks. And when there are risks, and in my particular instance on reflection, it was the lack of appreciation and understanding of the power plays, be it political power, in the case of, say, critiquing the government of the day, or in the corporate world, understanding that the majority shareholders or major shareholders within corporates have a lot of power and can wield that power in a manner that will crush you and take you completely off course. And I had those encounters where I had a run-in with the authorities, the government of Zimbabwe, which led to my incarceration. And then I had a run-in with partners, business partners that I had. And so much so that I had to break up a partnership, a merger that we had entered into, which led us to be one of the top 5 companies on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. We had a London listing, but in failing to appreciate the power play, and then I guess also standing for what I believe was right, led me to then have a demerger, which in a sense was quite costly to me as a businessman and as a shareholder. And then be able to then also make the decision to say, who am I? Stop myself and ask, what am I pursuing? Am I pursuing money? Am I pursuing a legacy? And what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I think that enabled me to then navigate the choppy waters of then, leaving the public corporate life, and then embark on a new journey of the private business life, and yet being able now to express myself through public enterprise, or to also communicate about public policy. I think this is where, April, the reflections. Africa is very different from the developed world in terms of how we interact with the authorities, how we relate to them, how we critique them, and how we contribute, for positive impact for the development of our nations. And those are lessons that I possibly had no mentor to guide me through. And I had to navigate and find out for myself that there is a survival formula and a prosperity formula within that environment. And so I find myself now wiser, better, stronger, and able to then mentor others to be able to navigate the choppy waters of, interacting or engaging in public policy, and then also to understand the plays within the corporate sector, and all the dynamics that come with that and the politics associated with it.
You said that so deftly, Nigel. And I will add to that very diplomatically, how you stated that, because there are always actors, right? Formal, informal, varied stakeholders, where their power is in the matrix is different. And so you have to learn how to navigate that. I think of this great scholar, Paul, who was, from a family of entrepreneurs, and he was, very wise and well educated, but he knew how to navigate different cities and different cultures, different power dynamics, and certainly I think of Christ, who did likewise, and one of the things that you said, and I think for some of us that are watching, and we're often taught, well, you don't want to have to start over, but it's okay, right? That the word fail is not fail; it is the first attempt in learning. That it may seem like the end, but really our effort never dies. So when we hear no, next opportunity, right? So it's about how we perceive what's happening, our perspective. And I think for your story, what I heard was you recognize that as it went on, you were going to have to demerge. I love that word. Demerge this partnership, this relationship, um, even perhaps the job, the position. And it's okay, because sometimes it happens. But it's certainly a lesson in learning. And when you know who you are, Nigel, and you just kind of touched on this, who you are at your core, what's at your nucleus, what is your North Star, what's your ethos of work, because what you do proceeds from who you are. So we have to really have, we talk about this with uh, some call emotional intelligence, some call it tactical empathy, but it all starts with knowing who you are and being self-aware. And you knew who you are, you knew what you believed, your convictions. And sometimes our convictions can put us into treacherous waters, right? Into deep places. But we see, as people of faith, we've seen this in scripture with varied stories. But we have to be trusting. And you talked about having spiritual fortitude, that you have to know that within yourself, I made this decision. It wasn't the right one. And now I'm going to have to work through the consequence of this decision. But I'm trusting that, acknowledging it, doing what needs to be done to rectify it, if it's able to be rectified or redeemed. If not, I'll just have to start over. But I'm still trusting you, God, and knowing that you'll be with me through it. And that, I believe, as a leader, has certainly guided me in my journey of consultancy. And when you talk about differences and things like that, that's part of what the Premier Image does as well, in consultating policymakers and those who are in government or in corporate spaces. Um, it's a journey. It's a learning journey. Sometimes we get it right, Nigel, and sometimes we
Mhm.
don't.
Absolutely.
But it's okay. God loves us through it. And one of the questions that you asked really leads into something else I wanted to ask you is, what are we pursuing? I was in a conversation with an official, with the government policymaker, and I was like, what are you pursuing? What is it that the government wants for its citizens? What is it that you want as a person? What do you want for your family, for your community, for your nation? And I think if we start there, right? Simon Sinek talks about the why. Um, why do you want it? What's your motivation? And I'm sure in your leadership institute, you've coached, mentored persons with motivation. How important really is the individual, Nigel, in the work, in the job, in the mission, in the nation? How important is the individual motivation and vision?
Wow, that's very deep. And I think, as you say, it's what God has put in your heart of hearts. It's almost like asking, what worries you? What breaks your sleep at night? What stops you from sleeping? What agitates you? And I think that's where my why is, in the sense that I have a deep sense of knowledge and appreciation of what my country represents for Africa. Zimbabwe is a very, very unique nation in the sense of the fact that we have a lot of resources. We are a learned populace. Unfortunately, that's had probably 3, if not 4 decades of sanctions, and clearly underperformed relative to its peers. And having traveled the African continent, I've probably been to about 18 countries, mainly in Southern Africa. And my deep desire is to see us bounce back as a nation, because we were a glorious nation at one point in time, and we've lost our luster, so to speak. And yet there is so much potential, so much depth. And I have a conviction that within my lifetime, I will see a better Zimbabwe. And I think it is so compelling a desire that I want and desire, have always desired to be part of that architecture in terms of propelling our nation forward. And so I feel that as an individual, I can make a positive contribution. And then I can also be able to leverage off my own experiences and my exposures to enable and facilitate others to explore the sort of contributions that they can make. And then together, as a force, we can drive our nation forward. And so for me, that is my why. I believe that is my calling, and hence my passion to develop leaders and enable them to see themselves as people who can influence and drive our economy as well as other African economies, as an example, forward. We have a unique history, as you know. I know you and I are very close to Ambassador Young,
Yes.
and he was part of the architecture
Yes.
of the development of Zimbabwe,
Yes.
for following our liberation struggle at the settlement that was arrived at.
Yes.
But I'm sure him and yourself and I shared that common belief that Zimbabwe has underperformed and we can do a whole lot better than we've done heretofore. And so it's become my passion to be a contributor to that.
Mm.
I am an economist, I am an investment banker, I'm a leadership developer by passion, and therefore, what greater cause, for me to be alive, and that is my why. That is compelling me and pushing me on a daily basis.
I love that, Nigel, that each individual is an integral part of the vision. And that is something I think that leaders should possess. Visionary leadership. We talk about servant leadership, but visionary leadership is what you just shared. How you have envisioned the nation of Zimbabwe. And yes, Ambassador Andrew Young, actually, my last trip to Zimbabwe, and it was my first as well, Nigel, was in 2019. And we
Mhm.
were there in Zimbabwe with Ambassador Andrew Young and a delegation. And we had also traveled to Southern Africa, to South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. And to hear him share, you could hear also his passion for Zimbabwe to become what she was created to be. And
Mhm.
I think about the intention of God. I think about the book of beginnings, where we visually see the inner vision of God that he saw first within himself, just as you shared, you see within yourself. And then he began to work and to
Mhm.
create what it is
Mhm.
he saw within to be displayed or evidenced outside of himself. And the fact that you said, I am convicted, that's what you hear a great leader say. I am convicted that I will see Zimbabwe become the greatness that she has been designed with intention to become. And it is that statement, Nigel, that passion, that conviction that I believe we will see manifested. And you're doing the work. You are taking your learning, your experience, even your passion, because as leaders, passion is contagious,
Mhm.
right? Um, Passion is contagious. It could be positive, contagious as you to build and create. But we've seen also in history where passion can be destructive. And so we have to make sure that we have good, positive passion and that we channel it and we focus it into where the individual has the environment to release their potential, to serve their gift, and to make family and community and nation together. It's all a part. It's all a part. And yes, I know there's a saying that says if you want to see the vision of a country, watch the roads that they drive or how they're building their infrastructure. And I say that too from what you shared today. If you want to see the future of a person, of an individual, watch their infrastructure, their inner structure, who their circle is, what they believe, how they do business, what they say, all these things. It's like a mirror. We see the mirror manifested on a larger scale of community and nation, but it starts really with the individual and vision. Oh, Nigel, this has been great. I've been taking so many notes, but I certainly uh, I do have one thing, Nigel. I think we're all inquisitive. We've heard you share a little bit about it, but if you had to think of three things, three of the top things that have really guided your life journey to this point, what would those three things be?
Well, I think it's a relatively easy one,
Mhm.
April, in the sense that I have always motivated my teams by saying my three driving factors. Number one is to glorify God in everything that I or my team does, I and my team do. So, number one would be glorify God. Number two is to enjoy the ride of whatever it is that we're doing. I like to be driven by it being fun, it being challenging. And then the third factor is, make it profitable, make it productive, and make it satisfying. So those are the three driving forces for me. Glorify God in everything I do, number one. Number two, have fun and be challenged while doing it. And then number three, to make money, make it profitable, make it worthwhile, in terms of it having been predetermined in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Simple.
Simple. God first, right? Priorities in order. And I love that you shared not just for you, but also for your team.
Mhm.
And those are others. And that is the servant leadership, Nigel, certainly, right? You have the visionary, which is part of leadership. Then you have the servant, the one who brings others along with them. My brother, my sister's keeper, yes. Yes, we are. So to glorify God in all that we do, because we are his representatives here.
Amen.
To enjoy the ride. I like that you said that. The fun part and also the challenges. The challenges which allow us to learn. And again, if it works and we get to merge or demerge, we've learned and we grow and we develop from those challenges. But enjoy the ride. Have fun. Three, make it profitable, productive, and satisfying. Because it is what you make it, right, Nigel? It's what you make it. We have the power. We have the ability, the enablement to create wealth, yes, financial wealth, but also relationship wealth and resource wealth. And how do we take those resources and add value and manage and all these things? But that power is given to us as intellectual and rational and reasoned beings. We are human beings that are human doings, but we can't forget the being part. And so, wow, Nigel, this has been a wonderful conversation. I certainly want to thank you for sharing your time, investing. I'll use that word since we're talking about banking and investment, for investing your time, your knowledge, your wisdom, your learnings, and your person with us on Exceptional Living. Any last thoughts, Nigel, that you have for us today?
I think I would just, as a parting shot, say to people, be who God created you to be and grow. Whatever it is that you are doing, be who God created you to be and grow.
Be who God created you to be and grow. There's a lot in that. So be intact. Be who God created you to be, because we are created and designed with purpose for purpose. There's the why, the purpose.
Mhm.
And then grow. So there is an expectation for us to develop and to produce, but to also be accountable, right? To be accountable for the ability that we've been given. So that is responsibility. So all of that, Nigel, in your last thoughts. Thank you so much. And we certainly, again, want to thank you for investing your time. Thank you for being a visionary leader, a servant leader, certainly in your home, to your family, regards to the family, to your team, to all of those who are part of your Leadership Institute, um, to your community, to your nation, and to the world. We are honored to have you as a gift to this generation. And so we just declare and decree blessings over your life, that God continues to enlarge your territory, your domain, your influence, your impact, and where your reach goes, even that beyond what you can see. But we thank you for, again, being a part of this show. And Wow. We hope to continue this conversation. I think this may deserve a part two. Nigel. I
Amen.
think it may
Thank
deserve a
you,
part two.
April.
Maybe it should be in Zimbabwe, right? We were
Oh,
so
yes.
close. We were almost so close to Hawaii. We'll get there. But again, Nigel, thank you so much for being a part. We certainly celebrate you and are just honored for the work that you're doing. And keep it up. We are here supporting you and certainly praying for you in all your efforts. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, April, and be blessed, and greetings to your family as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Exceptional Living. We have just heard from the incomparable Nigel Chinakara of Zimbabwe. And his story is really a testament to what faith, determination, and the willingness to learn and grow and hope and have faith can lend to. And we heard the evolution of his work, starting young in his 20s to now impacting the lives of countless thousands around the world through Leadership Training Institute. And you may say, well, that's not me. That's not who I am. How can I be like Nigel? Guess what? You don't have to be like Nigel. You can be uniquely yourself. You can learn from Nigel. And that's what I've done today. And I'm inspired. And so I hope that as you see this, go back and review it again and listen again. So many salient points, so many life-changing insights that we heard today. And again, want to thank all of you for liking, subscribing, and being sure to share this video. Until the next time that we're with you, we want to say, remember that you were created to live an exceptional life, unique by design. Thank you for watching, and God bless.